the state of North Carolina. It's good to have you with us on the Blaze here, Congressman. How are you?
Dave, I'm great. It's good to be with you today.
Thank you very much for being with us. And of course, you're on a key committee. Judiciary is always a key committee, but especially with what's going on right now with a couple of major issues that the Trump administration is trying to, put paradigm shifts, not just policy shifts, but really paradigm shifts in place. And we wanted to talk to you about a couple of those. Let's start with the lawfare. A lot of us learned the term in President Trump's first term, universal injunction. All right. And forgive me, I went to public school, but I combed through the Constitution a few times. And the term universal injunction's nowhere to be found, nor is it even implied. All right. So basically, it's the idea that a federal judge from the 666th district of Babylon can conjure up from the depraved recesses of his brain some kind of order, and it instantly becomes the force of law for the entire country. And at that point, thus speaketh Zarathustra, and we dare you to get the Supreme Court to overturn it. Otherwise, essentially, we have spoken, so say we all, right? And they're kind of trying to do this again already early on in Trump's term. All right, you guys on the judiciary, as part of Congress, you have some check and balances here. So what can be done about this?
Well, a couple of things that we're doing. That you alluded to the hearing that's being held this afternoon, and it's a subcommittee that's going to be looking at the just how these elected or these local prosecutors and state prosecutors are utilizing this lawfare. I mean, we saw it so much with President Trump, not only in his first term, the things, but when he came out of that term, just the way that the prosecutors at the state and the local just sort of went after him. And then, of course, as you mentioned, you've got these judges that are trying to step in and block his executive orders at every point and turn, all trying to throw up barriers, all trying to slow down the progress of what the American people voted for in November of 24. And I think that what we're trying to do this afternoon, at least in this initial hearing, is just look at the approach that they take and begin to expose those kind of things. But I think one of the things that's going to happen with these judges is there is certainly a move that is afoot to file impeachment against these federal judges that are just stepping in that is way outside the bounds of what they are doing and just trying to stop and slow down. And again, just throw up barriers at every turn. And that's using our legal system for a purpose that it is not intended. It's kind of like if you can't win at the ballot box, you just sue until it's blue, I think was the theme that they oftentimes used.
So the courts, as you know, Congressman, are the judicial branch is the only branch that is entirely subservient to the other two for its existence. It can't staff itself. Correct. It cannot fund itself. As Hamilton wrote in the Federalist letters, it has neither force nor will for its actions, and that's on purpose because we're giving out lifetime appointments and such here, and so we want them to be independent but not all powerful at the exact same time, and so they're independent in nature but not necessarily in force and will, so that they can't just bypass entire election results like they're trying to do right now. When would, the president has talked recently even about defunding school districts that won't abide by the, common sense gender policies, things of that nature. When do we, in your branch there in the Congress, where all funding begins, when do we just simply say, listen, that judge, that district court is just so over the top. We're Xing them out. We're just not funding them. I mean, they just have to. That just can't happen. This is so crazy. You can't do that. And so we're not cutting you a check this year.
Well, I do think that time is quickly coming as people are looking at all different avenues of approaches that we can have. One of the things that we were grateful for, and I think it showed just the problem and the extent of it when you had the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court single-handedly stepping in last week and hitting the pause button on a decision of a judge that was saying that, they couldn't slow down or stop this funding of USAID. And I think that it was important that Judge Roberts, I think it sent a message that it took the Chief Justice himself to speak out, because I think you're right. I think people do recognize the different branches of government, and I think that they recognize that the courts are that third branch, if you will. And it's very important that that Congress do understand our responsibility, that when they get so out of whack, that we do have to step in and we do have to take action. And that's one of the things that, again, we're discussing even today in this hearing is a bill by Congressman Fry from South Carolina that's called it's Promptly Ending Political Prosecutions and Executive Retaliation Act of 2025. Congressman Russell Fry is a sponsor of that bill. And those are the kind of things that we are looking toward.
What would happen? I'm going to ask you the kind of question that guys in your line of work hate. So forgive me in advance. All right. But
thanks very
let's
much.
Game theory. Yeah. So I gave you a 20-second heads up. All right. Let's game theory something out. I'm just kind of curious to see what the reaction would be. Where one of these courts tries to force the Trump administration to do something so not even just we can debate as something unconstitutional, just brazenly anti-constitutional. Okay, just brazenly anti-constitutional, and not only says we think that's not what the Constitution says, but tries to force the executive branch to act in the way that the courts want it to. All right. So affirmatively act, not just give a judicial review, but affirmatively act in a way that clearly goes against what the will of the people want and what the president ran on. And the Trump administration just says, you know what? Our answer to that one's going to have to be, that's going to be a no for me, dog. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing it. All right. And I would assume Democrats would respond to such a scenario with impeachment calls and things of that nature, because, you know, that's all we do now. Everybody just gets impeached every time after they get elected now. We're just going to do this forever, apparently. What would be the response of a narrow Republican majority in your body to that kind of a potential showdown? Because I don't think that that's really that fantastical of a game theory. I could see us having a situation like this 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months from now. So if that were to occur, how resolved do you think your caucus is when they respond, hey, he's a tyrant, we're going to impeach him?
Yeah. Of course, I'll answer it as you probably would expect people in my line of work to start by answering it. I don't like to deal with hypotheticals. But that being said, I do think that there is a unified body in this Congress that is supportive of President Trump. We understand the Constitution. Nobody is blindly following anybody. But I do think that we understand that there was a mandate given by the people of America. The Democrats love to argue and they hate that word mandate. But the reality is that the U.S. Senate was flipped to Republican. The U.S. House majority was maintained, even as thin as it is. And the White House was turned back over to President Donald Trump to be the 47th president of the United States. There was a mandate across this country. And I believe that everybody in this Congress recognizes that. I mean, that was the beauty of last Tuesday night's budget resolution that passed the House. It blew a hole in the framework and the narrative of the left, because suddenly they could no longer say Republicans can't govern, they can't get together. I mean, even the Senate started their own version of what they were going to do, because I'm not sure they had confidence and faith that we could get a majority vote and pass something in the U.S. House. And yet we did it last Tuesday night. That was a big victory for the president. That was a big victory for Speaker Johnson. It was a big victory for Congress, showing that we can do this. And so, in answer to your hypothetical, if it's going to require strong action, even against an out of whack judge that is taking place when the president stands up and says, no, we can't go there, I think that this Congress has his back at this point. That's me personally, from what I can gather from this Congress. There's a united front right now.
Let's switch gears. The other paradigm shift is birthright citizenship. and the president attempting to go back to what the original meaning of the 14th Amendment was. If you read the senator from Michigan, Jacob Hall, I believe was his name, is one of the main authors of the 14th Amendment and what he thought that it meant. He was even questioned at the time, hey, does this mean any foreigner comes in here and has a kid, they're a citizen? And he's like, I'm just assuming, we're all assuming it's the original implication that you had to be. That's why it says under the jurisdiction thereof. And he said that's why we don't count the children of ambassadors as citizens and things of that nature. They're not here under the jurisdiction of the United States government, right? And so this was really how this was interpreted until well into the 20th century, when it was expanded to basically just bypass immigration law. Obviously, you guys are working on this in that subcommittee as well. So where's this battle heading? Could you tell us that?
Well, I'm excited, obviously, about the president on January 20th issued his executive order that made it clear that he was going to protect the meaning and value of what it meant to be a citizen. American citizenship means something. It's a valued gift that we're very grateful for. And the president's executive order was the start. I'm very excited to be a co-sponsor on a bill by Brian Babin. Representative Babin from Texas has introduced a bill that really is going to help clarify this whole issue and codify it. And I'm excited. I'm hoping this bill continues to move forward because it's going to do that. Ultimately, you're going to see, I guess, the courts. President, when he knew that put that executive order in place, he knew that it was going to be challenged in court. It's going to make its way back up, I assume, to the Supreme Court. And my hope is that the court we have is going to find correctly. We do have a majority on the Supreme Court currently that are originalists and do believe in the original intent of what was written there. And we all know, every American knows that the 14th Amendment was not put in place so that illegal aliens could come across the border and have babies that instantly become American citizens. That was not the intent of it at all. And so I'm confident as we work our way through the courts. But from our role in Congress, while it's important to have an executive order, that's only as strong as the next president that comes in and tries to rewrite it. And then the court's interpretation is critical, and I think we need to hear from them. But Congress can codify this, and I think it's important that we take that step. And that's why I'm a co-sponsor of Representative Babin's bill that I think is really important in moving it forward.
I think that's a question. Thank you for saying that, Congressman. I get that question from my audience a lot, which is much of the good stuff Trump did in his first term, Biden just erased it in the first 10 minutes of his presidency, right? And so how
Correct.
Can we see, like in my home state of Iowa, with what's happening with our legislature, what the state of Florida has seen, the state of Georgia in some cases has seen, where they've been able to codify these things at a statute level so they can't just be instantly undone in one election cycle. So I know a lot of people are hoping that you guys are able to do some of that here in the Congress as well. Thank you for joining us, Congressman. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for having me today, Steve. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You bet. You bet. Thank you. That's Congressman Mark Harris.